Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue. This is Pursue 19A, which is hematology, hemostasis, and thrombosis. We are streaming live from IPGMER Kolkata. And we have a very basic topic, which is megakaryopoiesis and thrombopoiesis, platelet morphology, biochemistry, and function. These are the basic fundamental pillars to understand hemostasis and thrombosis. And to talk on that, we have Dr. Aisha Afreen Islam. She is an MBBS MD pathology, and presently she is a senior demonstrator at IPGMER and SSKM Hospital, Kolkata, with areas of interest in cytopathology, hematopathology, and oncopathology. Before I ask Dr. Islam to start, let me request all of you to keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, I would request Dr. Afreen, ma'am, please share your screen. Let's start.
Thank you, sir. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Thank you. Please start.
Okay. A very good morning to everybody, to all the listeners and students and my seniors. So today my name is Dr. Aisha Afreen Islam, and I will be presenting the basic topic on megakaryopoiesis and thrombopoiesis with mentioning of platelets on their morphology, biochemistry and functions. Okay, coming to the our first slide is on cellular origins of megakaryopoiesis. So if you look carefully, basically in a very simplified manner, megakaryopoiesis is the formation of megakaryocytes from human stem cells. Okay, the human stem cells which are found in the bone marrow, uh, and they proliferate to different colony forming units, which are the myeloid, erythroid and megakaryocyte units. Okay, from their progenitor units they form colony forming units. From there the mature megakaryocytes they originate, and from the megakaryocytes you have mature platelets which are circulated in the peripheral smear. So what are these progenitor cells from where these megakaryocytes are derived from? Okay, the main common from the human stem cells, we have the common myeloid progenitor cells, which and from there we have these megakaryocyte, erythroid progenitor cell, which are also known as the MEPs. These cells, which are committed to the megakaryocyte lineage, they express certain surface factors like CD41 and CD61, and also some glycoproteins. Now, before the common myeloid progenitor cells, they form colony forming units for these megakaryocytes, which are also simple colony containing 30 to 50 mature megakaryocytes. The cytokine requirements for these colony forming units are very simple. The thrombopoietin, it stimulates the growth of 75% of these colony forming units for the megakaryocytes with the help of interleukin 3. Okay. So apart from these colony forming units, we have these burst forming units also. What are these burst forming units? They are larger, more complex colonies which include satellites of megakaryocytes. So these progenitor cells, they express several common transcription factors and cytokine receptors to mature into the larger complex colonies.
Dr. Afreen, your screen is not changing.
Can you see this screen?
There is a lot of background noise. I mean, I think there are two. Yeah, your screen is not changing. Now it's fine. Just keep changing the screen. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
now can
this
you
is,
see the
yeah.
screen?
Just make it smaller. Just make it smaller. I mean, it's too big. That's why it's not fitting in. Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. Right. Please carry on. Thank you.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you. So for the if you can see this one, if you can see this slide, there are various stages of progression from the human stem cells to the mature platelets. Okay, so from the human progenitor cells to come to the stage of platelets, there are different chemical mediators. There are transcription factors. There are surface markers, as well as interleukins and glycoproteins involved over here. The most common, if you can see, is the TPO, which is also known as the thrombopoietin. All right. So what happens is this thrombopoietin along with the interleukins, they are the main chemicals which are responsible for the formation of mature immature megakaryocytes, which are then progress to form mature platelets from these megakaryocytes. So, as we said, there are many transcription factors. Someone else is presenting. I think someone's presenting their screen. Just a minute. Sorry, because I was interrupted by this thing.
I think you go one slide back. Yeah, please start from here.
From this slide, sir?
Yeah, and make it smaller so that we can see the whole thing. Yeah, and keep it steady. If you could keep it steady, it will be fine. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Right.
So coming to the genesis of these megakaryopoiesis. So what happens from the human stem cells? We have the common myeloid progenitor cell. Okay, and from those myeloid progenitor cells, which is also known as the megakaryocyte erythroid progenitor cell, we have the colony forming units. Okay, now these progenitor cells are committed to megakaryocytic lineage. They express certain cell surface markers like CD41 and CD61 along with CD42 and other glycoproteins. So what are these colony forming units? The megakaryocyte colony forming unit. They are cells that develop into simple colonies containing some 30 to 50 mature megakaryocytes. The cytokine requirements for these colony forming units for megakaryocytes are very simple. What happens is the thrombopoietin, they stimulate the growth of 75% of all these colony forming units with the help of interleukin 3. Okay. Now coming to okay. If you look into this picture, I hope this chart is visible. Okay. Coming to this picture,
Yes, it is visible. Please go ahead.
If you see, carefully, what happens from the hematopoietic stem cells to the stage of mature platelets, there are different factors which affect this maturation, as well as the presence of major cell surface markers also. So, among the major factors for the transformation is the thrombopoietin along with certain interleukins. Okay, the binding of the thrombopoietin and the interleukins is the main cytokine requirement for the colony forming units to mature into the megakaryocytes, which then give rise to the platelets. If you see, mainly the major cell surface markers between the stem cells and the mature platelets and mature megakaryocytes are the human stem cells. They express CD34 and CD38 among with other CD markers, where the mature megakaryocytes they express CD41, CD61 and 42B. The mature platelets they express CD41 and CD42B. Okay, coming back, GATA1. So along with these various surface markers and cytokeratins, we have some transcription factors also. The genetic basis of megakaryopoiesis, if you call it, there are certain these markers. There are transcription factors like GATA1. There is an X-linked gene which encodes the DNA binding protein, forming an important transcription factor in thrombopoiesis. So the target genes encoding these transcription factors, when they are mutated, they give rise to this megakaryopoiesis and the genetic thrombocytopenias. So apart from GATA1, there are other genes also, like the RUNX1, FLY1. The major problem here is that these target gene alterations they give rise to defects in platelet functions as well. Mostly we see over here is dysplasia of immature megakaryocytes and the megakaryocyte forming units, macrothrombocytopenia associated with other erythroid disorders also. Coming to thrombopoietin. So what is thrombopoietin? Thrombopoietin plays a key role in the megakaryopoiesis from the hematopoietic stem cells by binding to its receptor myeloproliferative leukemia protein, which is present on the surface of these megakaryocytes, also known as the CMPL. So once the thrombopoietin it binds with the receptor on the megakaryocytes, what happens is receptor dimerization. Okay, which then results in activation of the Janus kinase 2 and signal transducers and activators of transcription proteins that promote the maturation of these megakaryocytes. So this signaling pathway also recruits phosphoinositide 3 kinase and mitogen activated protein kinases for the maturation into the platelets. So as we have seen that from the human stem cells, with the help of the transcription factors, the cytokines and surface markers, and as well as the thrombopoietin, we get mature megakaryocytes in the bone marrow. So from the mature megakaryocytes, when we have to now see the formation of mature platelets. So for that, then we go on to thrombopoiesis. Okay, platelet. So for formation of platelets, they are formed by fragmentation of mature megakaryocyte membrane with the help of pseudopodial projections, which are termed as proplatelets. So in this entire process, because of this formation of these different pseudopodia, it consumes the entire cytoplasmic complement of membranes, organelles, granules and soluble macromolecules. So it has been estimated that each megakaryocyte gives rise to 1000 to 3000 platelets before the residual nuclear material is eliminated by macrophage mediated phagocytosis. So this process of proplatelet formation and from the proplatelets to to mature platelets, it involves the reorganization of the megakaryocyte membranes and cytoskeleton components, which includes the actin, the tubulin, and then highly motile processes in which the terminal of the process branch and tissue platelets are pinched off from the main megakaryocytes. So this is the ultrastructure of the mature platelets which we derived from the megakaryocytes. Okay, so in the peripheral smear with the RBCs, the platelets look like this with surface projections, and in ultrastructurally you have the lysosomes, the mitochondria, the dense granules, and the alpha granules, and an open canalicular system. Okay, the platelet lifespan. So platelets are approximately, the lifespan is 8 to 12 days, which depends mainly on the mitochondria which is present within the platelet itself. The packaging of 5 to 8 mitochondria per platelet is critical for their survival and proper function. Mitochondria are not only involved in adenosine triphosphate production but also in reactive oxygen species generation, calcium ion homeostasis, and cell processes and viability regulation. These platelets are highly metabolically flexible, which enables the cells to function under various conditions. Normally, glycolysis provides approximately 60% of the total ATP in the platelets. Oxidative phosphorylation, which also occurs in mitochondria, compensates for the remaining 40%. Okay, so here again one picture depicting the ultrastructure of the platelet, where you can see the cytoskeleton microtubules, then there is a mitochondria. It has a phospholipid membrane with high density for adhesion receptors. Then there is electron dense granules which contains ADP, ATP, serotonin and calcium. There is a canalicular system present. Then inside the cytoplasm you can see the dense tubular system, and along with we also have some alpha granules which contains adhesive proteins, prothrombotic factors and pro-inflammatory factors. We'll go on to the functions of each of these organelles later on. Okay, so now we come to the cell surface receptors of the platelets. So on the surface of these platelets we have integrins, glycoproteins, selectins, G protein, couple receptors and different immunoglobulin receptors. Okay, so what are these receptors for? These receptors are mainly for binding with different components of the endothelial as well as the epithelial cells. Like integrins, they bind with fibrinogen, laminin, collagen. Glycoproteins, they bind with the von Willebrand factor, collagen, fibronectins. Okay, and selectins, they are responsible for aggregation of platelets with other cell types including endothelial cells, neutrophils and circulating tumor cells. So what are the functions of these receptors? Now these receptors interact with their endogenous ligands, which include agonists for the initiation of hemostasis and enforce platelet activation. Cross-linking of these platelets with endothelial cells via the glycoproteins and fibrinogen leads to thrombus formation. The ADP, thromboxane and thrombin secreted by the activated platelets act as agonists for hemostasis and thrombosis. We also have certain inhibitory signaling pathways which are induced by nitric oxide and prostacyclins, which are present to avoid undesired platelet activations. So these are here in this picture, as you can see, the different cell surface receptors with their functions as well as the chemical mediators which help in the platelet functions. As I said, So the actual cell surface receptors of the platelets are responsible for their platelet functions. So what are the main functions of these platelets? First is a role in hemostasis, then the clot formation, clot retraction, repair of injured blood vessels with the help of platelet derived growth factors. There is also role of platelets in immune system, in defense mechanism, and transport and storage functions with the help of ADP, thromboxane A and thromboxane A2. Okay. So as you said, the major function where what we see in platelets is that the function in hemostasis or clot formations. Okay, if you follow carefully, we have different stages where from first stage to the end, where we can see that how the platelets help in hemostasis by making a clot. By clot formation. So what happens? There is endothelial injury. Endothelial injury, it exposes the von Willebrand factor which is present in the subendothelium. So once the binding of the glycoprotein receptors on the platelet surface, mainly here we are talking about glycoprotein 2B and 3A. Okay, these are the von Willebrand factors which surface factors which bind with the von Willebrand factor in the subendothelial tissue. Once the binding takes place, what happens? There is platelet adhesion and aggregation at the site of injury with the help of fibrin, and then lastly with the help of other tissue fibers like collagen and laminin and fibrinogens, we have the main platelet coagulation giving rise, platelet clot formation, giving rise to a primary hemostasis where the coagulation takes place due to the clot formation. Okay, now hemostasis takes place by two ways, where we have a primary hemostasis and a secondary hemostasis. So what happens in primary hemostasis? Primary hemostasis serves to immediately limit bleeding through the formation of a loose platelet plug. Okay, so the initially there is formation of a loose platelet plug which is by the von Willebrand factor. So first we have a site of injury. If you follow carefully, see there is a site of injury which exposes the subendothelial matrix, in where the von Willebrand factor it attaches to the surface receptor of the platelets, and that serves to attach platelets to the blood vessels and also with each other. So there is platelet to platelet adhesion as well as platelet to the von Willebrand factor of the endothelial tissue. So this activates the platelets, and then these activated platelets, they release potent anticoagulant compounds which aggregate to form a plug. So these platelet aggregates then again further provide phospholipid surface for activated coagulation and enzyme complexes. So initially the activated platelets along with fibrinogen, they aggregate together to form the clot. Now what happens in secondary hemostasis? Secondary hemostasis is due to the tissue factors which are present on the epithelial cells. Now once there is a vascular injury, the tissue factor is exposed, which is present on the surface of the subendothelial, the epithelial cells. So once the tissue factor is exposed, there is binding of the tissue factors with the this cascade of enzymatic reactions takes place, which ultimately result in conversion of fibrinogen to fibrin monomers. So once the fibrinogen is converted to the fibrin monomers, what happens? The monomers are cross-linked into insoluble strands that serve to stabilize the loose platelet clot formed in primary hemostasis. So the clot that is formed in primary hemostasis, these are stabilized due to the fibrin insoluble monomers in the secondary hemostasis. So what happens if there is defect in these primary and secondary hemostasis processes? So primary hemostasis causes mainly the mucocutaneous bleeding like epistaxis, and the defective secondary hemostasis leads to delayed soft tissue bleeding like hematomas, retroperitoneal bleed, and hemarthrosis. So what happens when there is alteration in this hemostasis pathway? So there is mainly three outcomes where we can see that if there is failure of these if there is failure in the stabilization of the clot, so what happens is the microthrombi and there is formation of microthrombi and microemboli, which results in vascular occlusion, giving rise to organ ischemia. And once the degradation of these clots gives rise to fibrinolysis, which results in fibrin split products, which causes excessive bleeding and leading to hemorrhagic shock. And once this activated or aggressive clot formation can cause consumption of clotting factors, which result in excessive bleeding and again hemorrhagic shock. So the hemostasis pathway is a well-mediated pathway where we have where the platelets prevent this excessive bleeding. So lastly, from hemostasis, we now come to platelets and immunity. How are platelets associated with the immune system in our body? So they are different, as you can see the screen, there are different ways by which platelets help in immunity, like immune modulation, leukocyte recruitment, pathogen capture and sequestration, and pathogen killing. So coming to one after the other, first we'll start with the immune modulation. So what happens when a foreign body, it enters blood for the first time, it causes antibody formation. So what happens again, next time when the antibody encounters the same foreign body, we have antigen-antibody complexes circulating in the peripheral smear. Now platelets have the ability to identify these complexes and to terminate or these antigen-antibody complexes. These antigens can be pathogens itself or the cell surface antigens of different pathogens. So by immune modulation, what we mean is that, so there is platelet adhesion to neutrophils. As I said, on the platelet surface we have selectins. Okay, so selectins are responsible for what? They are responsible for aggression of platelets with other cell types, which include endothelial cells, neutrophils, and circulating tumor cells. So once the platelets they adhere to the neutrophils, what happens? It enhances phagocytosis and promotes neutrophil degranulations. So once the neutrophil degranulation takes place, it releases the different various kinds of chemicals which kill the pathogens. There is also enhanced release of the reactive oxygen species, which induces endothelial activation and activates lymphocytes at the site of injury. Then leukocyte recruitment. Leukocyte recruitment is the platelet endothelial. Again, when there is platelet and endothelium interactions, it induces different chemical mediators as well as glycoproteins, when they bind to the von Willebrand factors, they release the cytokines and chemokine deposition, leading to leukocyte activation. Okay. Then again, as I already told you, there is platelet and neutrophil binding also. The platelet P-selectin binding with the surface of the neutrophils, which binds to, which again leads to more of fibrinogen recruitment at the site of injury as well as the pathogenic entry. Then pathogen capture and sequestration. So what happens? We have neutrophil extracellular traps. So what is this? NETs or neutrophil extracellular traps. Now binding of platelets to adherent neutrophils triggers the release of neutrophil extracellular traps which ensnare and kill various pathogens. So these traps are formed by combination of platelets and neutrophils. So upon detection of specific pathogens, the platelets rapidly aggregate and walling off the pathogen and attenuating its growth. Then pathogen internalization. Following pathogen binding and recognition, platelets have been shown to internalize some bacteria and viruses containing them in engulfment vacuoles. Lastly, direct pathogen killing. So how platelets help in the killing of direct pathogens? There is recognition and adherence to infected RBCs. With once the platelets they recognize the infected RBCs, there is release of platelet factor 4. These platelet factor 4 receptors, they bind with the RBCs FY receptors on the surface of the RBCs, which results in the phagocytosis and direct death of the infected RBCs. So in short, this was the role of platelets in immune modulation and immunity. So with that, we have come to the end of the